This video is intended for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only. Thumbnails are created to catch attention and may not accurately represent the actual content of the video. The content presented includes opinions and information gathered from public sources, historical accounts, and online discussions. We do not claim full accuracy. Please verify all information independently before making any decisions. This video does not intend to target, defame, or disrespect any individual, group, or organization. I am not a licensed emergency management professional. Always do your own research and consult a qualified expert before making major preparedness decisions. The views expressed here are my own and do not constitute professional advice of any kind. This content is meant to spark thoughtful reflection and discussion, not to cause fear or tell you what is right or wrong. Please watch with an open mind. Thank you for being part of our prepping family. Day one feels almost normal. The power's out, sure. Everyone's a little annoyed, a little inconvenienced. You break out the flashlights. You tell the kids it's an adventure. Maybe you even enjoy the quiet for an evening. Day 14 feels like a completely different world. I want to walk you through what a real 2-week grid down event actually looks like. Not the movie version, not the panic version, but the real textured hour by hour reality of it for 2 different households, one that never prepared and one that did. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly which household you want to be. Extended multi-week power outages are rare, but they are not fiction. They've happened after major hurricanes, ice storms, and grid failures across the country in just the past few years. Puerto Rico went without power for months after Hurricane Maria. Parts of Texas went days without power or water during Winter Storm Uri. Parts of the Northeast went over a week after major ice storms. 2 weeks is a realistic, sobering benchmark, long enough to expose every gap in an unprepared household's plan, and short enough that a prepared household barely notices the difference in their daily life. Let's walk through it together, day by day. Days 1 to 2, the adrenaline phase. For everyone, the first 2 days feel manageable. There's a kind of adrenaline and adaptability that kicks in. The unprepared household is managing their fridge and freezer reactively, eating what will spoil first, worried about food safety, opening the door too often out of habit. They're constantly checking phones for updates, and their battery is already dropping fast because they weren't charged going in. The prepared household already had a full pantry, stored water, charged power banks, and a radio. Day 1 and 2 look almost identical to a normal weekend for them, just without the TV on. Days 3 to 5, the convenience cliff. This is where things start to diverge sharply. By day 3, the unprepared household's fresh food is gone. Phones are dying with no way to charge them. Routines are broken. No work, no school, no normal schedule. And stress starts to climb. This is typically when people make risky decisions, driving long distances, hoping to find a store that's open, waiting in long lines for fuel or supplies, spending far more than they normally would out of anxiety. The prepared household is settling into a rhythm. Meals are planned from the pantry. Water is rationed sensibly, not out of fear, but out of habit. The radio gives them real information instead of rumors. It's boring, genuinely, intentionally boring, and that boredom is a sign that the plan is working. Days 6 to 8, sanitation and boredom set in. By the end of the first week, sanitation becomes a real practical concern in some areas, especially where water pressure has dropped or municipal systems are strained. Waste management, hygiene, and basic cleanliness take more effort than usual. For the unprepared household, this is often when things feel genuinely hard. Kids are bored and anxious. Adults are exhausted from the mental load of constant problem solving. Small conflicts within the household increase. For the prepared household, hygiene supplies were already stocked. Soap, sanitation bags, extra water for washing. The kids have books, games, and a rhythm. It's still not fun, but it's manageable because the systems were already in place. Days 9-11, community networks activate. This is the phase where, as we talked about in an earlier video, community becomes the deciding factor. Neighborhoods where people know each other start organizing, sharing generators for a few hours at a time, trading supplies, checking on elderly residents, pooling information. The prepared household, if they've built those relationships beforehand, becomes a stabilizing presence in that network. Someone others can lean on and who has resources to share without depleting their own supply to a dangerous level. The unprepared household, if they're isolated, is now dependent entirely on outside aid, official response resources that may be stretched thin across an entire region. Days 12 and 14, divergent realities. By the final days of a 2-week outage, the difference between these two households is stark. The prepared household has settled into a stable, low-stress rhythm. Their pantry is still well-stocked because it was built for exactly this. Their water supply, sourced and rotated correctly, is holding. Their bug-out documents and medical supplies mean no emergencies within emergencies. It has been, honestly, uneventful. The unprepared household is in genuine crisis by this point, dependent on emergency relief distribution, dealing with real food and water insecurity, exhausted and facing decisions no family should have to make under that kind of pressure. What made the difference? I want to be really clear about something. The difference between these two households wasn't wealth, it wasn't luck, it wasn't even location. It was a series of small, deliberate decisions made in the calm weeks and months before the event. A pantry built $20 at a time, water stored 2 containers at a time, a bug-out bag tested and refined, a relationship built with a neighbor over a simple conversation. None of those individual decisions felt dramatic when they were made. Together, they completely changed the experience of those 14 days. What actually breaks down first? If you're building toward this kind of resilience, here's the order. Things tend to break down for unprepared households, so you know where to focus first. First, information. Phones die, no radio, no idea what's happening. Second, fresh food and water, gone within days without storage. Third, sanitation and hygiene, strained without supplies. Fourth, mental and emotional stability. The compounding stress of the first 3. Fifth, safety and security. Only in the most extreme, prolonged scenarios and almost always mitigated by community. Building your preparedness in that same order: information, food and water, sanitation, mental resilience, security, matches how real emergencies actually unfold. Here's what I want you to do with this video. Pick one single day from this timeline, day 3, day 7, day 12, whichever one made you the most uncomfortable to imagine, and ask yourself honestly, would my household actually be okay on that day, right now, as things stand? Whatever gap you found, that's your focus this week. Not everything, just that one gap. The goal was never to simply survive 2 weeks without power. The goal is for 2 weeks to feel like almost nothing happened at all, because every system was already quietly in place before it was ever needed. That's what we're building here together, one calm step at a time. Stay safe, keep prepping, and I'll see you in the next video.